And that is why if I am inside of you, if I am you, why do I have to compare? There is no self to compare. Comparison between self will bring about suffering, will bring about the view of being inferior, or the view of being superior, or the view of being equal. Without self, no comparison is needed. You don't suffer at all. And that is the wisdom of non-discrimination. Self and non-self, self and others. And non-discrimination, nirvikalpa jnana. Vô phân biệt trí. Is something that exists. My right hand has the wisdom of non-discrimination. It has a name, right hand. It has also 5 fingers. My left hand has a name, left hand, also 5 fingers. In fact, my right hand can practice calligraphy and invite the bell. And it's my right hand that has written all the poems that I have written. In fact, I never write a poem with a computer. I always use a pen and write all my poems, except one time when I did not have a pen. So I borrowed a typewriter and I put an old envelope into it and I type with 2 hands. Only one poem written by both hands. All the other poems written by my right hand. But my right hand does not have any complex of superiority over my left hand. It never says, "Dear left hand, you don't seem to be very useful." All the poems of Thai, it's me who have written. It does not have that idea, discrimination. It's wonderful. That is why it is at peace with my left hand. They never fight. My left hand also, she doesn't have any complex of inferiority. She does not suffer anything. And that is right. One day I was trying to hang a painting, and my left hand was holding a nail, my right hand a hammer. And I did not do it mindfully. And instead of pounding on the nail, I pound on the finger. It's very painful. So the right hand put down the hammer and took care of the left hand. And then it does not have to say, "I'm sorry," because it considers itself to be the left hand, to take care of oneself. And does not say, "Left hand, you know something? I am taking care of you. Remember that. You should be grateful." It does not say like that, because the right hand does not think of itself as a separate entity. It knows that it is one with the left hand. And the left hand was not angry. The left hand did not say that, "Well, right hand, you have done wrong to me. I want justice. Give me that hammer." No, my left hand did not think like that. So it's very clear that the wisdom of non-discrimination is there in in our two hands. That is why it's always together in harmony. And if father and son, mother and daughter are capable of seeing that, they will never fight each other. If Hindu and Muslim know that, they will never fight each other. If Palestinians and Israelis touch that nature of non-discrimination, they will stop making each other suffer. Because of making the left hand suffer, the right hand suffer also. And that is why the complex of equality is also a complex. Possible only when you still have a separate self. But if you touch the nature of interbeing, you know that you are him, you are her. So there is no comparison is needed. And there is a very interesting convergence between modern science and the teaching of the Buddha. If you are a student of Buddhism, please work with the scientists. If you are a scientist, you might like to work with a Buddhist student. Because you can help each other. You can help each other. It's a very interesting period of history. And I think that the teaching of the Buddha can offer a lot of inspiration for scientists. If scientists can overcome the notion of subject and object, and then they will discover a lot of good things. The other day, I think the first Dharma talk we had on in the Upper Hamlet, we talk about the Sutra of Mindful Breathing. And we can continue because it goes perfectly with the Noble Eighth Whole Path. The first exercise of breathing is to identify the in-breath and the out-breath. The second exercise is to follow all the way through the in-breath and the out-breath. The third exercise of mindful breathing is to be aware of whole of body. And the fourth is to release tension in body. And then when we move to feelings, the fifth is to bring about a feeling of joy. Sixth is to bring about a feeling of happiness. The seventh is to become aware of a painful feeling. And the eighth is to release the tension, to calm down a painful feeling. With the 9 exercise on mindful breathing, we move to the realm of mental formations. Although feeling is also is already a mental formation. So the 9 is to be aware of any mental formation. Like joy, like sorrow, like despair, like hope. Whatever mental formation arises, we have to be aware, to recognize it simply. And we know that there are 51 mental formations, and feeling is just one of the 51. And the last 4 is about perception. So there are 49 because perception is one mental formation and feeling is another mental formation. And there is a totality of 51 mental formation. So 49 is left in this realm of meditation. The 9th exercise is to be aware of any mental formation that manifests. The 10th is to gladden our mind, to stimulate our mind, to bring good energy to our mind, gladdening the mind. A mental formation. Suppose you focus your attention on the fact that you have seen the path of the Buddha. You know the path of the Buddha that begins with right understanding, right view. And it is possible to practice right speech and right action and right thinking. So you are very glad about it. You have seen the way. You don't have to be fearful anymore. You know what to do and what not to do when you confront a difficult situation. So you feel glad, you feel confident. That is to practice gladdening the mind. And there are many ways in order to make yourself happy, glad. And the 11th exercise of breathing is to practice concentrating the mind. And the 12th is to liberate the mental formation. There is a mental formation called despair, and you suffer. And you want to be liberated from that mental formation of despair. Everything is dark. You want to commit suicide. You don't want to go on living anymore. There is a mental formation called anger. It is burning you. It makes you suffer so much. You don't want to stay in that. So you need to practice to do something in order to get out. And that something is the practice of concentration. And concentration samadhi is very important in Buddhism. Mindfulness, concentration, and insight. There are many kinds of concentrations. In Mahayana Buddhism, there are hundreds of concentrations, of subjects of concentration. But common to all schools of Buddhism, there are the three doors of liberation. The three kind of concentration that exist in every Buddhist tradition, and that is the three doors of liberation. Tam giải thoát môn. And the name is emptiness, sightlessness, aimlessness. Today is the 17th of June in the year 2009, and we are in the New Hamlet during our 21-day retreat. When we say mindfulness, we know that mindfulness is always mindfulness of something. There cannot be mindfulness without the object. That is why we say mindfulness of breathing, mindfulness of the body, mindfulness of the feelings, and so on. The same is true with concentration. To be concentrated means to be concentrated on something. And concentration is a power, is a powerful energy that can help us break through so that we can get the understanding we need for our liberation. Because liberation, release, salvation in the Buddhist tradition is liberation by understanding, not by grace. Salvation by understanding. So understanding is the kind of insight that will liberate us from our afflictions, our fear, our anger. And we know that every one of us has the seed of understanding within. And that is Buddha nature. The 9 exercise of mindful breathing is to be aware, to recognize the mental formation that is manifesting in our mind, whether that is positive or negative. When the mental formation called anger manifests, we have to recognize it. And the power, the agent, the energy we need to recognize is mindfulness. Mindfulness of the mental formation. Breathing in, I know anger is coming. Breathing in, I know anger is still there. Breathing in, I know anger is dying down. So that is mindfulness of mental formation. Breathing in, I know joy is coming. Breathing out, I know that joy is still there. Breathing out, I know joy is fading out. So that is to recognize the mental formations, whether it is anger or joy or despair or jealousy. We have to learn how to recognize the mental formations that is there. That is meditation, to recognize what is there, first in our body, and then in our feeling, and in our mind. And we recognize all mental formations, all kinds of mental formations. The 10 is to gladden the mind. There are ways enough to bring joy, to bring gladness, to bring stimulation to us. And the 11 is to concentrate. This is first of all to concentrate on the mental formation that is there. The mental formation that is there, whether it is joy or happiness or sorrow or fear, they become the object of our concentration. No matter what it is, whether it is positive or negative, that is the object of your concentration. And it can be equally bring you insight and liberation. You might like to meditate on joy, on hope, on loving kindness, but you might like to meditate on sorrow, on fear, on despair. All of them are objects of your meditation. And whatever object of your meditation that you choose can bring you insight and liberation. If there is insight, that is liberation. Suppose you have a depression. And depression may become the object of your meditation. It may not be pleasant to think about your depression. You want to forget it. But your depression is a reality. So you might like to have a deep look, a close look on your depression. You might like to understand the nature, the root of depression. You may like to handle your depression. You don't want to try to run away from your depression like you used to do. And if you have some power of mindfulness and concentration, you will not be afraid of your depression. You said, "My dear depression, I know you are there. I'm going to handle you, to help you, to take care of you." So with mindfulness and concentration, you recognize it. You don't run from it. And after having recognized it and accepted it, you begin to look deeply into it, to see how it has come to be. And that is according to the principle of the Four Noble Truths. First of all, you recognize the truth of ill being, because depression is an ill being. The first noble truth is ill being. After having recognized and accept ill being as something that really is there, you make the second step. You look deeply in order to see how that ill-being has come to be. You look for the roots, you look for the cause. A depression cannot just come like that. It should have causes. We must have allow it to come. We might have consumed in such a way. We may have lived in such a way that made that depression possible. So we are looking for the second noble truth, not as a theory, but reality. And in the Buddhist tradition, we speak of the four kinds of nutriments, the four kinds of food that can either bring well-being or ill-being. And happiness and suffering can be understood in terms of food, in terms of nutriments, because we consume every day. And the first kind of nutriment tứ thực is edible food. What we actually put into our mouth and chew and swallow or drink. If it is good food, healthy food, and then there will be no problem, there will be well-being. If it is not appropriate, and then we get sickness. So that is the first of the four nutriments. So before eating, we should look at the table, all the dishes, and breathe in and out to see whether that kind of edible food is good for us or not good for us. And you have the courage to remove the dish that we think is not good for our health. Mindful eating. And that can begin by shopping. When you go shopping for the food, you already have an idea, mindful shopping. At the marketplace, you know what to buy and what not to buy. And when you cook, you have another occasion to practice mindfulness. You discard the kind of food that will not bring ill-being to you and to members of your family. You choose healthy food. And the third occasion is sitting around the table. You breathe in and out, and you recognize what kind of food that is healthy and what kind of food that is not. In the 5 contemplations that we practice before eating, there is one contemplation about compassion. Let us eat in such a way that we can reduce the suffering of living beings and preserve our planet. By eating alone, we can preserve our planet. we know how to eat properly. Eat in such a way that can help us cultivate compassion. We know that without compassion, we cannot be a happy person. We cannot relate to other living beings. And for edible food, the Buddha used the story of a young couple who wanted to cross the frontier to go to take refuge in another country. And they took their little boy with them. And they had to cross a desert. But they did not calculate well, that is why halfway through the desert, they ran out of food. And they knew that 3 of them are going to die. So after much thinking and debate, they made a terrible decision to kill the little boy and to eat the flesh of little boy in order for the couple to survive and cross the desert. This is a true story. The Buddha had heard from a couple of refugees, and he told the monks. So they ate one morsel of that flesh and kept the rest on their shoe to dry by the hot sunshine. And every day each of them ate one piece of flesh of their son. And every time after having eaten a big piece of that flesh, they look at each other, they said, "Oh, where is now our beloved little boy?" And they beat their chest, they pull their hair, they suffer, but the little boy has died. But finally they crossed the desert and they came to the other country and take political asylum. And after having told the story, the Buddha asked the monks, "My dear friends, you think that the couple enjoy eating the flesh of their son?" The monk said that it's not possible, dear teacher. One cannot enjoy eating the flesh of our own son. The Buddha said, why we eat? We should eat in such a way that can preserve compassion in us. Otherwise, we'll be eating the flesh of our own son. That is recorded in a sutra called the Son's Flesh, available both in the Pali canon and the Chinese canon. The Son's Flesh. It's horrible to do such a thing. You are compelled to eat the flesh of your own son. But that is something very close to us. And without mindfulness, we may be eating the flesh of our own son and daughter. We learn from UNESCO that 40,000 children die every day because of the lack of food, the lack of nutrition. 40,000, and every day. And yet there's a waste of food in many countries in the West. people do not have cereals to eat. And we make cereals, we use our cereals in order to make alcohol and to feed the stock. We want to eat chicken, we want to eat pork, we want to eat beef. And in order to make a pound of meat, you have to spend hundreds and hundreds of pounds of cereals. And yet the people in the world, they don't have the cereal, the rice, the wheat to eat. So when we look deeply at our piece of meat, we know that this is made of hundreds of pounds of cereal that could have been used in order to save the dying people who do not have food. And looking deeply into a glass of liquor we are drinking, you see that this may be the blood of our children. Because instead of using that cereals to feed the hungry people, well, we have made it into alcohol. So drinking alcohol and eating meat in such a way is very close to eating the flesh of our children who die every day, a little bit in the world. And that is mindfulness. Mindfulness helps us to see things that other people cannot see. That is why before eating, we should look at our food, our drink, to see whether eating this will harm our compassion or will help develop our compassion. And this is why that contemplation is very useful. Let us eat in such a way. Let us maintain our compassion alive, by eating in such a way that we can reduce the suffering of living beings, preserve our planet, and reverse the processes of global warming. And statistics and scientists have proved that if developed countries, overdeveloped countries, reduce the eating of meat by 50%, only 50%, and reduce the drinking of alcohol by 50%, that is enough to change the world and to remove hunger and to prevent 40,000 children from dying every day from a lack of food. So the sutra on the sun's flesh is still relevant. We should eat with compassion. We should eat mindfully, so that we would not have to eat the flesh of our ancestors, the flesh of our children and their children. That we can generate compassion in our heart, so that you can become a happy person. With mindfulness, we can relate to other living beings, not only humans, but animals and vegetables. There is a culture, we can describe it as a monastic culture. Like the way the monastic eat, the way the monastic walk in the compound of the monastery. In the monastery, before we eat, we keep silence for one moment. We practice breathing in and out, and we say the 5 contemplations. we try to see where the food we eat has come from. We try to see that by it, there is a way of eating by which we can help reduce the suffering of living beings and preserve our planet. And that can be used. That element of monastic culture can be used in lay life, in the life of a lay person. Many Catholic and Protestant and Muslim people, before eating, they bow their head and they say a prayer. So it is not something strange if we, before eating, we invite this bell to sound, we breathe in and out, and we say the 5 contemplations, so that we can be sure that the kind of food we eat is good food, the good kind, that will help preserve our compassion. And it will bring a lot of joy if we know that we are on the right path of eating.